So I was in Chicago yesterday. I had a previous engagement in Chicago that I didn't take care of because some business things came up. But in the midst of the business, I had time to go to the Nike store.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
I would make
And in the Nike store, the woman who was waiting on me said, "You could just go punch in and start working." She said, "Have you been? Were you out running before you came in here?" I said, "Oh no, this is just how I go." So for those of you who may have come here maybe for the first time and come here and expect to see somebody up here in a suit, this is my suit.
Yep.
Hope you can get used to
As long
it.
as it has a swoosh on it.
I know. It's a phase. It's a phase that I'm going through, an idiosyncrasy of my old age. So I sent the text out this morning. Said, "Wake up." It was late, but it did get out there before time. This is what we want to talk about this morning, is this awakening. This awakening of the spirit that some of you may have been familiar with. All of us are headed in that direction, and all of us have, probably versions of it from time to time, and all of us are hoping, I know, even if we don't think about it in those terms, that all of us are hoping to actually continue to be awake, to know that we're alive, to have that sense, that vibrant sense, and to be alert, paying attention to what's going on around us. This is really this is the culmination. It's the idea this morning of the awakening is the same thing as in Buddhism, is the same thing as enlightenment. There's a tendency for us to think, well, that's nice for Shakyamuni. That's nice for the Buddha that he could become enlightened, but really, come on, how is that going to happen for me? Or maybe we're actually holding out some hope that it's going to happen for us, but we have some questions about how it's going to happen for some others. But this is it is really there for all of us. And actually what the Course in Miracles says about it is it's already happened, and you've just kind of slightly gone back to sleep. But that awakening is available to us all the time, and this is the goal of the mystical path. This is the goal of finding our way to the place where we have awakened from separation, where we have awakened from what I always say self-centeredness, but then people get insulted. But this is the problem. And there was a lesson last week in the Course in Miracles that said, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. So see, there's this tendency, I have this tendency, and I'm going to assume that since I have it, that some of you, maybe even a couple of you may have it, is that I think I've got all kinds of problems. I think I've got a problem with this thing. I got a financial problem. I got a relationship problem. I got relationship problems. Put the plural on that. I've got problems all over the place. Everywhere I look, there's a problem. And what this is, what this viewpoint is of life being a series of problems, just one after another, I really think all of us can relate to that, of thinking, many times, and especially when we're on a path, we're going to have some very good days, but they're going to be some days when we're going, it just seems like one thing after another. And so this is actually the scenario that we have designed collectively. In our subconscious, we have designed a world that presents us with one problem after another. And so I just want to say to you, I know you don't, a lot of times we don't want to think this way, and it may even it may even bother us, but the fact of the matter is you have consented to every single one of these problems that's come to you, and I'm not saying consciously. I'm not saying you go around consciously thinking that you just want another problem. I'm saying that somewhere underneath, we're calling these experiences to us. Now, that may sound like bad news, but actually is very good news. Because what that means is if I'm calling these problems to me, I can stop it. And that's what this awakening is really about. It's about waking up from that self-centeredness, waking up from that separation, and becoming aware that we are all part of, rather than separate apart from. And so there's a number of ways to get there, but always, and this is another thing that the Course says, is that all these paths, even though they may seem crazy to us when we look at them from our perspective, all of these spiritual paths are actually trying to get to the same place. The Course just says some of them are going to take longer. Well, if it took us all the time from the Big Bang till now to just get to the position that we're in, some of those paths might be really long. I don't see. There's another judgment. See, this is how it goes. This is how it goes. I try to be nice, but somehow the ego just steps in there and wants to say, yes, this path is superior to the other person's path. That's a distraction. That's something that we don't need to be worried about. So here's what the Course says. It says, let me recognize that the problem so that it can be solved. A problem cannot be solved if you do not know what it is. Even if it is really solved already, you will still have the problem because you will not recognize that it has been solved. This is the situation of the world. The problem of separation, which is really the only problem, has already been solved. Yet the solution is not recognized because the problem is not recognized. Everyone in this world seems to have his own special problems. Yet they're all the same and must be recognized as one if the one solution that solves them is to be accepted. Who can see a problem that has been solved if he thinks the problem is something else? Even if he is given the answer, he cannot see the relevance. That is the position in which you find yourself now. You have the answer, but you are still uncertain about what the problem is. A long series of different problems seems to confront you, and as one is settled, the next one arises, and then the next. So if we recognize that the problem is our sense of separation, and when I say self-centeredness, I want to be clear about that because it is easy to think, well, geez, I'm not self-centered. I'm generous. I'm kind. I'm charitable. I'm out there working in society, and that's all good, and actually all of those things are a counter to this problem, except when we're doing it for self-centered motives, which is very easy for that to happen, and for it to happen and us not even recognize that it's happening. But when I say self-centeredness, I don't necessarily mean selfishness. Selfishness is like an aspect of it, but the self-centeredness that I'm talking about is that sense of aloneness, that sense of being apart from, that sense of being alone in the midst of a crowd, the unloved in the bosom of a loving family. Sometimes it's so severe, it's like we're in a black hole. And there doesn't seem to, and if we look around, we see, and we can just, first of all, we can examine ourselves. And let me just suggest that the more severe our sense of separation, our self-centeredness, the more mentally ill we are. All of us, by the way, since we're here, let's just have an acceptance of the fact that since we're here, we're somewhat insane. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the midst of this struggle. I don't mean here in this room. So there's something going on, and the insanity is actually, and we just look back and we've talked about this before, but it's important. It's this word insane means fragmented. That's what it means. It actually means, like, if you think about that we've been broken apart And that's the reason that our thinking is off, and since our thinking is off, that's the reason our experiences in the world are off. And so sane means healthy and whole of mind. And so insane is then broken, right? So then the awakening is actually the restoration to sanity that some of us recognize from the second step. This, oh, look at, this is the thing. The second step is like giving this at least an affirmative statement that the sanity can be restored. And in that 12th step of the awakening, that's where it's delivered. And so, in the Course actually says the exact same words, that this healing that we're doing is a restoration to sanity. So to wake up, to come out of it, so I always say that what's going on is, I get this is a question I get in regards to the Course a lot. Well, if this God was so loving, why would He allow all these terrible things to be happening in the world? And then the answer, of course, and this answer nobody wants to hear, God's not doing it. We're doing it. Marianne Williamson got the question in one of the seminars one night. The woman said, well, all the poor people in the world and the starving and all of that kind of stuff, what does that say about God? And she said, that says a lot more about us than it says about God. And this is not, and again, this could be, we can put this on our list now as something else to be guilty about, that it's our fault, that there's starving people. Well, if we look at fault, it's just going to spin into more kind of deals like that. But the fact of the matter is to think about that we actually could do something about it. But first, we have to do something within. And that's what this path is all about doing the work within so that we can come to peace on the inside, so we can give freely in our lives, and in our giving, we influence those around us. It just keeps, every time, every loving thought we have is a creation that goes on forever, touching every one of our brothers and sisters. Every loving act is a creation that goes on forever, touching those around us. So this is our part, right? I mean, by ourselves, and this is the futility of it. We think, oh, well, by ourselves, there's nothing we can do about all of this stuff, right? I mean, the big picture stuff, right? Well, the fact of the matter is, we are not by ourselves. That's the first error that we made. That's the self-centeredness. We think we're by ourselves. We are not by ourselves. We are together. And so we come together in whatever groups it is, families, neighborhoods, we come together with like-minded people and move towards solutions. But it all has to start with that. It all has to start with the awakening that we have within ourselves. Now that doesn't mean that people who haven't had an awakening can't be helpful, can't be of service. It just means that until we begin to wake up, that we cannot be as effective as we could be. So we move from this place of aloneness, and we start to become aware more and more of the connections in the world, and that the sanity begin to. If you think about our identity as being a mirror that's broken on the ground, and those shards are everywhere, and they start to like move, or a puzzle or whatever, and it starts to come together, and then we have an awakening. And then, it's okay, so now we have this awakening, and to me, this is how I know that it's happened, is that I have a sense of peace. I know I'm connected. There is no worry. I don't have worry about anything. I know everything is okay. And this doesn't mean that there's not actions for me to take, but actually what happens is I know what action to take without a struggle. I know what to do. Now, this is important, because a lot of people think that when we're on a path like this and we come to an awakening and then all of a sudden that's just the way it stays. But the problem is that the ego is, if we're still here. Now, yes, I actually have this sense, I've got a suspicion that we could have an awakening that was deep enough that we could actually turn sideways and disappear. I think that that's actually possible. And I also think that there are some who have had awakenings that were that deep that they could have turned sideways and disappeared, and they didn't. They decided to like hang around and open up the gate for other people to come through. So I think both those things are going on. I think I've met a couple people like that. So, but each and every one of us can have an awakening, and each and every one of us can stay in that place of being awake for extended periods of time. And the more we practice, the more we can stay in that place. The biggest problem is that it's so, and I just like call it going back to sleep, that we go back to sleep when we start to have concerns about personal things. We begin to have concerns about personal things that we say, I've got to have this, and if this doesn't happen, then I won't be okay. All of those kind of thoughts are thoughts that are putting us back to sleep. Because the fact is, in the awakening, we know that we don't have to worry about any of that all that is coming without us having to be concerned. Doesn't mean you don't have to go to work in the morning. Doesn't mean we don't have to do the things that we have to do, but it becomes an ease. It becomes a loving responsibility rather than some burden. So now, so back to this idea that boy, I can go far afield very quickly. I'll tell you. So God. I don't want anybody to be upset. I'm going to present an idea here that may be objectionable to some. I'm not trying to insult you. And it's okay with me if you don't believe it. But I'm just going to present the idea. God is not in this world that we have made. This is our little movie. This is our little fantasy. This is this thing that we are doing. And the whole basis of the world that we have made is that we tried to be separate from God. That was the whole mistake that we made. That doesn't mean God's not everywhere present. It just means that this world that we have made isn't anywhere. This is the point I'm trying to make, that the world that we have made is an illusion. It isn't anywhere. And so God is everywhere present except in this little nightmare of self-centeredness that we have created. So, and it's like this. So then the other question then, of course, is, well, then why doesn't God just like wake us up? Why doesn't he just say, come on, get out of this? Well, the Course actually says that would be a form of violence to shake us awake, and that God would never do that. So I think of it in a symbolic story. I think about it as like what's going on is we are still in bed, sleeping. Yes, it is 5 after 11. We're still in bed sleeping. God is in the kitchen making breakfast, and the good smells are going all through the house. We're oblivious. All the others are at the table enjoying this wonderful repast, and we are still in bed with the covers pulled over our heads. And if you think that sounds like depression, that's part of it. And God's he's saying, where's that kid? What happened? So what's going on with God is not an awareness of this craziness that we've had going on here, but like an absence, like we're missing. And the Course says that our place in God cannot be filled by anyone else. And so by us holding ourselves out from it, we are actually that actually makes God incomplete. That's impossible. God can't be incomplete. But in our minds, see, this is the important thing. In our minds, us holding ourselves out makes God incomplete. And of course, what the ego has done is it's decided to take the place of God. And this is what Gnostics said for many years, and a lot of them were killed over it. They said the God who made the world does not know God. So now we're not talking about the mythical God that makes the world in Genesis, because that's a symbolic story that actually can be related to this idea if we look closely at it. But what the Gnostics are saying is the God that made this world does not know God, meaning the ego that creates these scenarios that we continue on with really does not know the God of love. And so their whole approach was gather enough knowledge so that they could then become aware of God. In other words, gather enough knowledge so that they could wake up. Now there's a number of paths to this awakening. Some cultures have sought an awakening by surrounding themselves with things of beauty and contemplating them. I will tell you that you can surround yourselves with things of beauty. There's all kinds of things out there, especially now there's so much to look at and to desire and to covet. And that bringing those things into your experience just because you think they're shiny and you'd like to own them, that will not lead to an awakening. However, go to the museum. Sit quietly. You don't own any of that, okay? You may sit there and say, and you may want to be covetous and say, oh, I wish if only I had that in my living room. Just sit there and be quiet and allow the beauty to come to you. Allow to open your mind and your heart to whatever it was that created it. And then that kind of meditation can, and if you're lucky enough to be able to gather things of beauty into your experience and into your home, try not to own them. You cannot become enlightened by owning them. Know that they're yours in stewardship, yours to care for and enjoy for a moment, and then to pass on when you can't use them anymore. All the coveting, all of the holding, all of the clutching, it just leads to more dissatisfaction. It just leads to the idea that I've got to have some more. By the way, I really do have enough Nike stuff. But also, I did buy some more yesterday. Okay. All right. So, the Gnostics, they sought enlightenment through knowledge. They were going to gather all the esoteric knowledge that they could possibly. They would gather all this knowledge and they would sift through. They would discard what they thought wasn't pertinent, and they would keep building and gathering all of this knowledge. So